Hello, and welcome back to Storytime with Eric Zimmer. Where we last left off in Sagamore Hill, Theodore Roosevelt's summer White House, we were talking about a rising politician's home. So this was leading up to Theodore Roosevelt's presidency, and when Sagamore Hill became the summer White House. Now, we're going to learn all about its time as the summer White House. So you ready? Alright, let's begin. Chapter 4, The Summer White House. On September 14th, 1901, Theodore Roosevelt was sworn in as the 26th president. At age 42, he became the nation's youngest chief executive, a title which he still holds to this day. The unexpected change in circumstances followed President William McKinley's trip to Buffalo for the Pan American Exposition, where he was shot by an assassin on September 6th. Initially, McKinley was expected to survive, but a week later, 8 days to be exact, he died before TR could reach the city. With Roosevelt and his family moving into the White House, Sagamore Hill lay dormant until midway through the following year, when it became the summer White House. On July 5th, 1902, the president returned to Oyster Bay, accompanied by his secretary, George Cortelyou, 2 stenographers, 2 New York detectives, 2 post office inspectors, and 2 members of the recently created Secret Service. TR and some of his children, who greeted him at the station, rode the 2 miles to Cove Neck in open carriages during a heavy rainstorm. Before his ascension to the White House, TR had always spent the 4th of July with his children. But in his first summer as president, he traveled to Pennsylvania to give an Independence Day speech in Pittsburgh. Without their father's usual supervision, the boys exploded their fireworks on their own. After Kermit nearly blew off his hand by igniting a firecracker in a bottle, a nonplussed TR read about it in a newspaper on his way home. "I suppose that is to be expected of the family," he commented. To compensate for the absence on the holiday, the president invited neighbors and cousins to join the family for a fireworks show 2 nights after arriving at Sagamore Hill. Cortelyou and the stenographers established offices on the 2nd floor of the Oyster Bay Bank building, while telephones were installed in the pantry and library at Sagamore Hill. The president's summer routine was later described in a Broadway magazine profile. The day began with him bounding out of bed no later than 7 o'clock in the morning, and taking a shower bath in water as cold as he can get it. Well, it is in the summer. TR would come down for breakfast wearing riding clothes. The president isn't dainty in the matter of appetite. Eggs, fried chicken, and sometimes waffles were on the menu. He would spend 10 to 20 minutes reading items requiring immediate attention in the library before heading out on horseback for about 2 hours with his wife or sons. After his morning constitution, at 10:30 a.m., Secretary William Loeb, successor to Cortelyou, would arrive in a big white Secret Service automobile with up to 3 assistants bringing mail in leather pouches. The correspondence took 2 hours. Secretary Loeb and his assistants do not look any too fresh when they resume their seats in the white automobile and are taken back to the executive offices in the village. TR, however, still had plenty of energy for the afternoon's visitors who arrived at 1 o'clock. Even though he was now running the country, no matter how important the visitor, TR continued his policy of stopping work to play with the children at 4 o'clock. One day, in that first July as president, he was in the library discussing Cuba with a visiting statesman when his sons and cousins gathered at the door. "Cousin Theodore, it's after 4, one of them implored. "By Jove, so it is," the president replied. "Why didn't you call me sooner?" Turning to his visitor, Roosevelt said, "I must ask you to excuse me. I promised the boys I would go shooting with them at 4 o'clock, and I never keep boys waiting. As president, TR's spur-of-the-moment recreational adventures with family and guests included the old stalwarts of horseback riding, rowboat excursions, clam bakes or picnics on a beach, and of course, running up or tumbling down Cooper's Bluff. But now they could also be grander, such as a trip down Long Island Sound on the presidential dispatch boat, Sliff. The point-to-point hikes or obstacle walks also continued, but now included even more important visitors and fears for the safety of the chief executive. Roosevelt wrote to James Rudolph Garfield, future Secretary of the Department of the Interior, about one hike. He was the son of President James Abram Garfield. We swam the mill pond in great shape with our clothes on. I know they had bathing suits back then. I wouldn't have done that. Executed an equally long but easier swim in the bay with our clothes on. In between times had gone in a straight line through the woods, through the marshes, and up and down the bluffs. I did not look exactly presidential when I got back from the walk. Ha! TR's sister, Corinne, recalled going on an obstacle walk with a course that took them towards an especially unpleasant-looking little bathing house with a very steep roof. She hoped in vain that her sibling would go around it. I can see the sturdy body of this President of the United States hurling itself at the obstruction with singular agility, chinning himself to the top and sliding down on the other side. The children, whooping with pleasure, and his sister followed. The obstacle walks were conducted with strict safety rules, for the children, but not the president. If a child fell climbing a tree because he did not use both hands or fell in while crossing a brook, he was sent home. Or she. The long-treasured planned activities also continued into the presidential years. The highlight of the summer for the sons and male cousins continued to be the annual camping-out adventure. Those were open to anyone who could dress himself and understand that, when once off, all ills from mosquitoes to a downpour of rain must be borne not only uncomplainingly, but cheerfully, TR stated. The sites were usually 5 or 6 miles away and reached by rowboat. The boys are sufficiently deluded to believe that chicken or beefsteak I fry in bacon fat on these expeditions has a flavor impossible elsewhere to be obtained, he wrote to a friend. The nights ended with TR telling stories of his exploits around the fire. On some outings, Roosevelt decided he did not need to be under the scrutiny of his security detail or the press corps. On one occasion, he eluded them to camp out on a headland farther east with Ted, Kermit, and a cousin. The chief executive's most famous adventure with the boys and without the Secret Service was a horseback ride to the home of his cousin, John Ellis Roosevelt, on the South Shore. TR, Ted, and 2 cousins rode all night and well into the next morning to cover the 35 miles to Sayville through a heavy rain. They returned the next day, leaving Sayville at 4 o'clock in the morning and getting back to Cove Neck just before lunchtime. I am glad to see you safely home, Mr. President, Edith greeted him as a matter-of-factly. The New York World was unimpressed by the feat, quipping in an editorial, "Now that the President has proved by actual experience that the trip from Oyster Bay to Sayville and back can be made on horseback, with what new discovery will he next thrill a waiting nation?" The first couple made sure they had time to themselves for picnics or galloping across the countryside. Edith sometimes joined her husband in his regular pastime of chopping down trees. She would wield an axe and remove branches from trees TR had felled. During the presidential years, the Roosevelt children began to disperse to pursue their education, or in the case of Alice, marriage. Fiercely independent and impetuous, Princess Alice, as she was known in the press, spent less time at Sagamore Hill as she got older. She traveled widely and stayed with high society friends. She visited more rarely after marrying Ohio Congressman Nicholas Longworth IV in February 1906. But she always came back to Cove Neck for holidays, summer gatherings, and important family events and emergencies. Ted and Kermit were away at school, but enjoyed their summers in Oyster Bay. Kermit's 1908 diary describes activities such as playing the mandolin while Ethel played the piano, and target practice with his father. With Alice gone, by 1907 all of the remaining children had separate bedrooms. Kermit had Alice's old room on the southeast corner of the second floor, Ted was on the third floor, and Ethel in the old nursery, also known as the gate room. Archie was in the northeast room on the second floor, with Quentin in a small space behind Archie's room known as the hideaway. As the summer White House, Sagamore Hill initially functioned with approximately the same number of servants as before. A chambermaid replaced the seamstress and nursemaid. Her nursing duties for the boys no longer necessary, Mammy remained as sort of a retired nanny until September 1908. The waitress gave way in 1906 to a black male butler and assistant butler who had worked with the White House, Charles Ryder and James Amos, respectively. The latter became chief butler with Alan Dean as his assistant. They lived in outbuildings. With TR now president, the number of visitors swelled. Special guests might be picked up in the city or in Connecticut by Sif and brought to a dock in Cove Neck. Some wealthier visitors, such as J.P. Morgan, came on their own yachts. Among the important persons who came to Sagamore Hill in its first year as the summer White House was New York Senate political boss and U.S. Senator Thomas Platt. When her husband's meeting dragged on past the lunch hour, Edith sent Archie to intervene. TR pretended to be offended, calling his son an abominable little rascal. As they went into lunch, the highly formal senator asked the smiling First Lady if she approved of this strange behavior. Platt later told a reporter for the New York Journal that he was exhausted by his visit, adding, "I have climbed Sagamore Hill. I do not think I shall attempt it again. I am getting too old." Most guests, however, were enthralled. They were all in excellent spirits, the New York Sun noted after interviewing some of them. Other important visitors that summer included Secretary of